Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where I, Gooey, rank all of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda series. And we're continuing on with Link's Awakening. As we continue our search for the instruments, we're looking for the island's secret in a shrine, and eventually we can come across the owl, who greets us and tells us there are two shrines, one to the north, the other to the south. First, head south, where ancient ruins speak of the windfish. You will learn much there. And our journey to the southern shrine brings us through some ancient ruins and face to face with this giant Armos knight in the southern shrine. And once we take him down, we gain the face key, which we need to enter the next dungeon, but we also gain access to a dim room with some carvings on the wall. And when illuminated by the torches in the room, the island's secret is revealed to us. The carving says, "To the finder, the Isle of Koholint is but an illusion. Human, monster, sea, sky, a scene on the lid of a sleeper's eye. Awake the dreamer, and Koholint will vanish much like a bubble on a needle. Castaway, you should know the truth." Outside the shrine, the owl greets us after this revelation and says, "I see you've read the relief. While it does say the island is but a dream of the windfish, no one is really sure. Just as you cannot know if a chest holds a treasure until you open it, so you cannot tell if this is a dream until you awaken. The only one who knows for sure is the windfish. Trust your feelings. Someday you will know for sure." And with the face key in hand, we're able to travel up to the northern shrine, which gives us our next dungeon, level 6, Face Shrine. So, along with the key for Face Shrine, we have a map that looks like a face. This dungeon, it really continues the mysterious quality that we just got there in the southern shrine. It's like this big, ornate palace. It's got beautiful pink walls and all these, like, decorative different floor tiles, and these, like, giant beautiful elephant statues, very ornate. And the music in this dungeon is, I think, easily the most ominous yet too. We had definitely more aggressive in the last dungeon, but now things are getting a bit ethereal, spooky, mysterious. I don't know. The tension it's really picking up for sure. The dungeon here, it's a little bit more, we've been talking about the progression and stuff, and it's starting to get a little bit out of hand in terms of, like, describing it to you all, in terms of, this one's a little bit more non-linear, but I'm gonna try. It's definitely a good step up in terms of the context of the dungeon so far. This is, like, I think, maybe the most complex in terms of non-linearity so far. It's still, relatively speaking, in the great grand scheme of the world, it's not actually that bad. This is a small little Game Boy game we're talking about, but for this game, they really, they just do a great job in this game of making things feel so massive with such a small game. So in the beginning of this dungeon, most of the explorable area we can really go to is in the west wing. In the entrance, things kind of split, and you can go left or right, and the left side of the dungeon is really where a lot of the stuff we need to get in the beginning is. The main, like, walled off area in terms of our progression is over in the east wing. It has one room that requires, like, one of the doors needs a key, and the other requires, like, the dungeon item, and that's definitely worth keeping in mind here. Now, the west wing, on the other hand, is quite open in terms of what we're able to grab. The main navigational puzzle is actually centered around these crystal switches that we're seeing again, and we can get most of the items that we can get here right away by doing the navigational puzzles to move around them. It reminds me a lot of like the Swamp Palace in A Link to the Past. But yeah, we can get a lot of stuff in any sort of order, like the map, the compass, the stone beak, the dungeon item, and a small key. Which, we need all that. This is where things get a little bit trickier to describe, because with either the key or the dungeon item, you could progress further into this dungeon, like on the east wing, but I feel like either is a likely scenario as well. If you went with the key alone, you would not honestly get that far, and the dungeon item, I think, gives you a little bit more options. Like, really, you're going to want both, but I think it's likely that you could find one or the other, and it's, this beginning area with the floor switches, and even there's like an underground passageway to get to the dungeon item that spits you back out in an earlier section. Like, I think you can get kind of turned around and start heading one way and not fully explore the area, so it's definitely likely that you could head over to the east wing, like if you say had just the key or just the dungeon item. And that dungeon item actually that we're provided with is the level 2 power bracelet, which is honestly, it's a little bit underwhelming from a gameplay perspective, as it just allows us to lift like heavier objects, like the elephant statues I mentioned. It doesn't change the gameplay really, but it does play well into the progression of the dungeon, like I mentioned, in terms of like creating a gate and having this be like the key to progress. Right away with, picking it up, we're able to get some goodies actually on the west wing. There's even a little area I wanted to mention where you can exit the dungeon, and it leads just to a little outside area with some more goodies. It's something we saw in A Link to the Past, but it's kind of just a minor little thing, but it is cool. But really, the big goal is we can actually progress further into the east wing of the dungeon. And we have those same sort of puzzles we've seen in previous dungeons where we have to open a door by throwing something at it. But the thing that was stopping us was there wasn't like pots in the room or anything. But now with the ability to lift the elephant statues, we can pick those up and throw them at the doors to open them. Now over in this area, we'll be able to access another a minor small crystal switch puzzle that just gives you some crazy Tracy medicine. It makes things feel a little bit more complicated because you feel like, I gotta get this chest, and so you gotta go to another part of the dungeon and find a crystal switch and remember to backtrack. It's a nice little optional thing. I definitely really like it. I think the main thing in this area, again, the big thing we're looking for, is another small key, which it can be used on that same lock door I was talking about earlier. You can either use the other key that could be found earlier, or this key. And I think it's actually worth pointing out here that in the original version of the game, not in the remake, I think this room that the key goes, like above the room the key unlocks, and the room leading to the dungeon item, so two very key rooms in this, don't actually appear on the map. And instead, if you're looking at the map, they look like the eyes of the face that the map makes. And if we're not able to figure out that the walls are bombable, which you totally could on your own, there's an owl statue that actually gives a hint about this if you use the stone beak on it. So it's another great use of like the stone beak in terms of giving optional information as a sort of key. And say if you didn't find the dungeon item earlier because of this, now if you've gotten if you've taken the one key to come over this way, now you've hit a new wall that that information could be very useful. But it's pretty likely that people will figure this out. But still, I think it's a solid stone beak hint. Regardless of how we got here, we also get a run-in with the dungeon mini-boss, who's called either Rover or Smasher. I've heard different things over the years. I don't even know. But he's this weird little guy. He barks at us and wants to play catch. And he throws this little ball at us, but the only problem is the ball hurts you when you get hit. So the fight's pretty basic. You just dodge the ball and then pick it up and throw it back at him. This is a decent use for the bracelets, though I think you could take him on without the power bracelet. But regardless, it's a fun little mini boss fight. I like this fight. So moving on here, another great little puzzle in this section is that the door in the room just above Rover's chamber, when you go through it, it just brings you to the room just below his chamber, and it's kind of like this never-ending loop, sort of like the Lost Hills in the original Legend of Zelda. And the real trick here is to just eventually figure out this is not where I need to go, and lift an elephant statue that's in the room, and there's a little underground passageway that you can go through. So it's kind of neat. I'm sure that it's all these little things that I think could trip someone up, because I could totally see how that might get a little confusing initially. Now this passageway leads us right to like a pathway where we could go, if we wanted right now, straight up to the Nightmare's chamber, but of course we still need the key. So it's cool, you can get there, but there's still other things that need to be done. Also, in the room we come up in, we're able to pick up another small key, but there's another key block that you need to spend either it on or, that one of the earlier keys if you happen to find them. What's kind of neat about that passageway that's beyond it is that it was all actually entirely visible earlier in the west wing of the dungeon from a higher level. And so I just like the nice little teases, it makes the dungeon feel bigger again on the small screen. And here is where we really need that other small key, because the passageway at the end of this corridor leads to a new area, and there's some minor goodies here to collect, of course. I think it's worth pointing out, actually, at this point, that there is a few rooms in this dungeon, including the one with the goodies, that they have these like knight's chess pieces, and they're kind of annoying. Like in the original version, you just had to throw them both and hope they landed heads up, but it was totally random, so you could just be doing that for a while. And in this one, they made it so you had to throw them into a specific pedestal, but they like bounce and land a certain way depending on how you throw them. But it's not exactly like knight's chess pieces, I think. So I don't know if someone knows really. I was able to kind of, figure it out, but I don't quite understand their movement. It seems like they move the same way every time, but it might just be trial and error to figure out, what the pattern is and then line it up. But either way, they're kind of annoying. But two of the rooms that are needed and are optional, but if you're not trying to 100% or anything. But there is one where it's required to progress nevertheless, and it's a little frustrating. But the main path that we're taking leads us actually right through another battle with the Dodongo Snake mini-boss, which is kind of cool. I like seeing the mini-bosses kind of return, but more presented as like a regular enemy, or, it's not the main mini-boss. It really feels like the stakes are being raised. It's like, oh, remember that guy we faced? Well, now he's here too. He's just like a normal enemy. But once we defeat those, we can get, there's like a little gap we can hook shot across where, again, we could visibly see it from earlier in the dungeon from a lower area, but now we're like hook shotting over that lower area, which is kind of cool. And there's this is where having that extra key is important, where you need all the keys, because we kind of went down this long path, and now there is a key block here that across the gap that you have to unlock. And if you don't have the key, it's a little annoying because you gotta like drop down and retread and find that extra key. But I think a lot of people don't like that kind of backtracking. I actually kind of like the punishment personally. I like even some of the annoying backtracking. Now if we get the key and we're able to progress properly, we get kind of to the final puzzle, which there's a chest. It has the nightmare key but it won't open on its own. And there's an owl statue in the room that kind of just gives it away, but it suggests to try, throwing something at a chest that won't open. And yeah, I don't know, one of the pots will suffice. Throw it at the chest, opens up. That's kind of a cute little puzzle. It's not, amazing, but it's cute. I like it. And that gives us, everything we need to trek back and take on the Nightmare's Chamber. And wouldn't you know it, the final nightmare of Face Shrine is a face on the floor. This guy's name is Facade, even better. And when he shows up, his face pops up on the floor, and I like his attitude. He says, "Hey dummy, need a hint? My weak point is, whoops, there I go, talking too much again." And yeah, it's a basic fight. You drop bombs on the face to injure him. I think that's the only way to hurt him. It's very easy. But there's a little bit more going on in the remake. I'd say that, because there's tiles that fly and hit you, and in the remake there's actually some physics to it where they bounce the bomb away if you put it down. And so actually I found in my recent playthrough of it, it wasn't difficult, but it took me a little bit longer. And I think it's appropriate. Actually, it's no anglerfish, that's for sure. Fun but easy. When you defeat him, all right, these guys, they're starting to plead a little bit more. Some of these nightmares. He says, "Okay, listen up. If the windfish wakes up, everything on this island will be gone forever, and I do mean everything." This has been a very concerning dungeon from start, middle to end, I would say. But we get the coral triangle and hear a little bit of dings from it. It's pretty good. And once again, we're bathed in white light and given the message, mountain. Something calls from the mountain. And we're going to be up in the mountains for a couple episodes really now until the end, which is fitting, I guess. This is a great dungeon. I really like it. Some of the other dungeons I've come into the rankings and I've kind of had a vague idea of where I want to place them, or some I've even just pre-ranked and I kind of just explain where I want to put it, but I didn't really know where to put this when I come into this. Every dungeon so far, I think, has been a pretty solid progression from the last in terms of upping the complexity and the gameplay, and they're kind of moving between different types, different styles, some are a little bit more linear, some are not. So, I think this is an A+ in terms of that in general. It's definitely in the top 10. I think Tail Cave is, we were kind of mean to Bottle Grotto, but it's definitely in the top 10, and I think, I can put it above Tail Cave pretty easily. Hyrule those are kind of our intros. I really like the Hyrule Castle set piece, but I think I can see it go above that. This is similar in terms of Angler's Tunnel of, the boss is a little bit better here than in Angler's Tunnel, but it's still pretty basic. I would say both the items in this and Angler's Tunnel don't significantly change the gameplay in ways that I like. That I think are very fun, but they definitely, in both their respective dungeons, are, they're still very fun to navigate. They're very fun to navigate, I'll say that. Now, here's where we kind of hit what's tough. Swamp Palace is solid. I think we kind of established. Swamp Palace is good, puzzle-based dungeon, or based on one theme, and this sort of has that in part of the dungeon. I can honestly see putting this above Swamp Palace, even though that I like the hook shot in that. But You know, it's not heavily used there afterwards. There's just a couple points. It's still great, still good. Don't get me wrong. So I think I could see it above Swamp Palace. Am I making a mistake here? I don't think. I mean, it's like I like its complexity more than Key Cavern. You know what? I feel like it's kind of. I feel like it is. Around the Swamp Palace area is good for me. Maybe above Angler's Tunnel, because it does remind me a little bit of Angler's Tunnel, slightly, and it's definitely more open and non-linear. Yeah, that feels right. I think below Swamp Palace sounds good. You know, at the end of the day, it'll be fine whether it's above that one or below it, because it's, you know, we're gonna get further along, and it's kind of gonna sink down a little bit, but I do feel like it's in this area, feels right, and so I'll stick it there. It has a lot. It's great. It is a great dungeon. Oh my god, like this is definitely no shade. Because we're in the area here. Everything that's like, I don't even know, like. Even from like 20 and up, I really like a lot of these dungeons. And then when we're getting into this top 10, we're ranking, I think, some of the best dungeons in the series, if I'm being quite honest with you. So, yeah, don't get me wrong. This is a solid spot for it. So yeah, I think above Angler's Tunnel, the number 8 spot sounds good for me. Yeah. You know, maybe if the item was a bit more fun, like that would have been key. That would have maybe shot this crazy high. Whereas I think of, and even just like the themes and stuff like that, it's a little bit more basic, where there's some more unique stuff going on with these other dungeons that put it way above to me. But we're getting to some of the more highly praised dungeons in this game next, so definitely going to stick around for that coming next week. We got Eagle's Tower, we got Turtle Rock, and I think we're going to wrap up Link's Awakening with the Turtle Rock video. We'll do our like finale that we've been doing with that one instead of, and we'll kind of wrap up the game too. It'll definitely be extended into like the main boss, but that will be its own separate thing, just because I don't really think of the Windfish Egg as like a final dungeon, you know. It's just like one minor puzzle, and yeah, so that'll just kind of be lumped in there, because we like to kind of wrap up the games too and give a little retrospective on them. So we got 2 more videos in Link's Awakening, and let's just leave it at that for now. But yeah, I'm so excited to get to those. Hopefully my placement's okay with you guys. Hopefully my placement's okay with you all. Definitely let me know yours, because this one was hard to rank. Anyway, I will see you next week at Eagle's Tower.